Good evening and welcome to the November 18th, 2024 Mercer Island Arts Council special hybrid meeting. The time is now 5:32. I'm Elizabeth Mitchell, Chair of the Arts Council. Tonight's Arts Council meeting is in person at the Mercer Island Community and Event Center, and we are also using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this week. Public audience members may be listening to the meeting by telephone or online. Welcome to all, and thank you for joining us tonight. Counselors, please ensure that your microphones are turned on for the roll call, and if participating remotely, please have your cameras turned on. Will the city staff please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair. Chair Mitchell.
Present.
Counselor Scone.
Present.
Counselor Harrington.
Present.
Counselor Gibson.
Present.
Counselor Young. Counselor Rajagopal.
Present.
And Vice Chair Becker. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The first item of special business tonight is Parks Zone Public Art Development Standards. For that, we'll welcome City Manager Jesse Bond. You are not the city manager.
Painfully, no.
Tonight we welcome Recreation Manager Ryan Daly.
There we go. Yes, City Manager Bond was unavailable tonight, so lucky for everybody, you get Recreation Manager Ryan Daly, and I'm joined by Carson Hornsby as well, online, who will be providing a presentation. So tonight we're talking about the Park Zone Public Art Designation Standards. Carson will provide in his presentation a little bit of the background that the Parks and Recreation Commission is working on regarding the overall park zone standards. Thank you to all of the Arts Council members. I had a chance to speak with each of you ahead of the weekend to give a little bit more background on this process regarding the park zone. As staff, we try not to add things to your agenda without a lot of heads up. This was one of those situations where we had a Parks Commission meeting, decided, gosh, we're talking public art, this needs to go to the Arts Council. And so that's how this got added a little bit late. But luckily you already had a meeting scheduled. So Carson, do you want to go ahead and move forward with the presentation?
Yeah, sounds good. Let me just share my screen. All right, is that showing up correctly in the Slater room?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks. All right, good evening, Arts Council. My name is Carson Hornsby. I'm a management analyst in the city manager's office and here this evening to give a quick presentation on the Park Zone and solicit some feedback from the Arts Council on development standards for public art. Before we get into specifics on development standards and public art, just want to cover a few other agenda items. We'll talk a little bit about the background information of the Park Zone and also the open space zone, which was recently adopted by the City Council. We'll cover the framework of a zoning code and the different components of zoning that are commonly found in the Mercer Island City Code. We'll talk about the development standards, what they are and how they relate to public art installations in parks. And then we'll open it up for discussion by the Arts Council to provide a recommendation to staff on what, if any, development standards should be included in the new zone for public art. So starting off with background information on the parks and open space zones, the City Council directed staff to develop a new park zone as part of the comp plan update in 2024. During the initial discussions about the park zone, the PRC provided a recommendation to staff to split this work into two separate zones. The first of which was the open space zone, which, as I mentioned, was adopted by the City Council just earlier this month, actually. And the second zone is parks. And so open spaces are really more undeveloped natural habitats with a few trails, and the park zone is aimed at the other multi-purpose parks that are developed within the city's park system. So the PRC and the Open Space Conservancy Trust Board collaborated together to develop legislation for the open space zone throughout this year, and they provided a recommendation to the Planning Commission in May. And in September, the Planning Commission completed their legislative review process and provided a final recommendation to the City Council on the open space zone. The City Council adopted the open space zone on November 4th with an effective date of December 31st. And so all's to say here is that we expect a very similar, if not the same process for the park zone. And that work is actually already underway with the PRC right now. The PRC held their first meeting on the park zone in October, and we just met earlier this month in November to continue discussions on the new zone. And we're working on drafting a draft park zone to present to the PRC at their January meeting. The timeline that we have in mind currently is that the PRC is anticipated to provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission in Q2 of 2025. And the Planning Commission will then conduct that same legislative review process, just like they did for the open space zone. And the City Council at the moment is anticipated to undertake review and adoption of the new park zone by the end of 2025. So what exactly is a zoning code? A zoning code separates land into zones and establishes permitted land uses and development regulations for each zone. So when you see examples in the Mercer Island City Code in Title 19, you'll notice that generally each zone consists of the same 5 components. The first of which is a purpose statement, which is sort of an overarching statement on what the goal or goals are of the zone. The designation requirements are a list of criteria that's used to determine whether land is included in the park zone or land is included in a zone. The uses permitted are all of the allowed uses within the zone. The development standards are what the regulations are related to any sort of physical modification or structures within the zone. And then lastly, we have a section for definitions, which we define any terms that require further definition. So in the case of public art, when you look at the uses permitted section, it will say uses permitted, and then public art will be listed as a permitted use. And then that's really the extent of the uses permitted. The development standards are really where you get into any sort of further detail on what types of regulations regarding public art installations are in the park zone. So when it comes to development standards for public art, staff for the past several weeks, as well as the PRC, have been sort of grappling with how do you put regulations into place for public art when there's really so many different types of varying art pieces in parks. And so we went ahead and provided a few examples of public art in parks just to get you started thinking about what types of regulations can be put into place. So we have a ton of different sculptures. We have some different developed land sculptures as well, with rocks and stones and things of that nature. We also have, for example, at Luther Burbank Park, art that is incorporated into bollards. These are called the handsome bollards. We also have a ton of different murals and mosaics, even giant dragons that double as play toys for kids. There's also art that's incorporated into trails and pathways. And so when you think of all these different examples, we'd like you to be thinking of, what regulations are appropriate to put into place that really encompass all of these different examples of art. And so when it comes to development standards, as I started to explain on a couple slides previously, development standards are really a set of broad, high-level regulations for development and structures that are related to things like size or dimensions or appearance or other possible design aspects. And so while you're thinking about what, if any, development standards should be included in the park zone, we'd like you to consider a couple things here. The first of which is The zoning code is not necessarily the primary or intended location for all rules and regulations related to public art in the park zone. We provided a couple different examples in the agenda bill this evening for other tools that the city has to regulate allowed uses and public art and things like that in parks. And the second thing we'd like you to consider this evening is the process that the Arts Council is currently undertaking to update the 6-year public art work plan. There may be some recommendations that may be better suited to cover public art in parks that are included in that public art work plan. So we have a couple questions for the Arts Council this evening. The first of which, does the Arts Council recommend any development standards be included in the park zone to regulate installation of public art in parks? And if yes, what types of development standards should be included? And that is all the slides that I have. So at this point, I think we'll go ahead and turn it back over to the chair and have some discussion on public art in parks.
Thank you so much, Carson. I'll go ahead and open it up to the rest of the Arts Council. Are there any comments or thoughts in regard to regulations for public art, park zone, public art development standards?
So I've got one question. If we don't provide any development standards for art projects, what other kind of checks and balances are provided so you don't put whatever you want in the.
Absolutely.
In the park.
Excellent question. So if the Arts Council were to choose to not recommend any development standards, you do have the policy documents that you're currently working on. So your art acquisition policies, your placement of public art, your scoping of projects, things like that. Those would be the processes you would rely on to determine what gets placed in a park zone location. The other aspect is that you would be, as the Arts Council, you're making recommendations on those that then go to the city council for review as well. So you have that process that reviews what would go into the park zone related to public art on a per project basis.
So anything deemed art would have to go through that process, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think that it would be very limiting if we were to put specific standards on art. And so I would move to recommend that public art as a permitted use in the draft park zones doesn't have development standards, but continues to utilize the Arts Council to sort of steward and recommend the process of selecting public art. So could I have a motion?
Well, I was
You have a
gonna.
question? Yes.
Well, not necessarily a question, but I might think that, you know, we've been spending a lot of time developing the guidelines for public art, acquisition, what our goals, what criteria are, what makes, you know, the art that we want on the island. It occurs to me that maybe the Parks Department ought to look at what we did and adopt what we have done. I mean, everything we did, we're looking at it with the lens of the art being in a park, because most of our art is in a park.
Right.
So we weren't developing those guidelines saying, oh, we're only interested in something inside the community center.
Correct.
So
So it's
I think what we've
sorry, Susan.
addressed,
Go ahead.
art in, I think our guidelines do address art values and criteria for selection and maintenance and on and on and on in a public park. So I don't know if that is punting it back or if you want a recommendation from us, but
If I could respond
Go
to that
ahead.
really
Yeah,
quick,
please, Ryan.
I think bringing your comments and Councilmember or Arts Councilmember Gibson's comments as well. Staff would look to utilize the guidelines established by the Arts Council for the review process. Going into the park zone documentation or into the development standards, we wouldn't put all of that document because that would be redundant.
Right.
So we more than likely, if what I'm hearing is correct, we wouldn't put forth development standards related to public art, but we would utilize the Arts Council's policies and procedures to review and place art, public art.
So there would be standards, it would just be the standards that the Arts Council has already put forth. So it's my understanding is that the Parks and Rec has asked us to help them because they started to get a little bit too, for lack of a better word, far into our territory when it comes to art standards, and they were looking to put a lot of restrictions which could impact the art that we would be available to put there,
Right.
is
That's
my
why I'm wondering,
understanding.
did they look at what we've done?
We
As
have
far-
not, we have not brought that forward yet because
Okay.
that work hasn't been completed yet. So that we would be taking your motion, whatever that might be, and taking that back to the Parks and Rec Commission to say, this is what was provided as guidance from the Arts Council. And as I'm hearing it, it sounds like leaning away from developing additional standards and relying on the documentation that we already have to move forward if, you know, public art were to be contemplated, you know, a project or something like that in a park zone location.
That would be what I would like to move forward with if the rest of the Arts Council is in agreement with that, that the Parks and Rec, the Park Zone Public Art Development Standards are not put in place by the Parks and Rec Committee, but the Arts Council standards that we have already come up with and have been working on are put in place of that. So how would I?
Carson, did you catch where we were going there on a motion?
Yeah, one moment. I can throw something up on screen. Just give me a sec here.
Yeah, just for the record, I'd like to concur with what Chair said.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's taking a sec to open here. One moment.
No problem.
While I'm pulling this up, I just want to clarify something here in that it's not necessarily that the Parks and Rec Commission was delving too deep into arts territory. This is more of just sort of a proactive measure that we took to make sure that the Arts Council's feedback was incorporated into this draft related to public art.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so up on screen is a possible motion that the Arts Council can use if they so please.
All right, so you would, the Arts Council would move to recommend public art as a permitted use in the draft park zone without development standards, and to continue to utilize the Arts Council to steward the recommendation processes for solicitation, acceptance, and placement of public art installations. Is that clear to the rest of the Arts Council?
Make that motion.
Thank you. I have a motion from Counselor Scone. May I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second from Counselor Gibson. And then can we have a roll call vote?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair Mitchell,
Aye.
Counselor Scone,
Aye.
Counselor Harrington,
Aye.
Counselor Gibson,
Aye.
Counselor Rajagopal.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And thank
Thank
you
you.
to Ryan and Carson for joining us this evening, and to the Arts Council for that very quick and informed decision. The second item of special business tonight is the 6-year work plan for art in public places progress. And for that, we welcome Sarah Blubus, CIP Project Manager. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So yes, we are continuing our conversation tonight about the 6-year work plan for art in public places. So in your packet, you received 3 specific documents that we'll start going through tonight. There's really only one endorsement I'm asking for tonight, and that'll be on the goals that will be included in the work plan, because we did, staff have proposed another new goal since our last conversation in October. The other 2, or the other 3 documents, the full documents, will continue to discuss between now and January. If necessary, we can continue the conversation into February as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, great. So like I said, tonight we're starting the conversation about 3 specific documents that were included in the packet for this evening. The first is the draft 6-year work plan for art in public places. So we will walk through the different sections of that plan. I'm happy to take some initial feedback tonight, and then I'll give some next steps for continuing to provide feedback from now through the end of the year. Then we'll continue talking about the public art project opportunities list, and I'll collect feedback to refine the list. So we'll have a little exercise to get through some of that. And if time, we will start, continue the conversation about guidelines for public art. The third document that was included in your packet are those updated guidelines that were referenced earlier tonight during the first item. I know that it's already, starting to get a late night, so we'll kind of see how we're going, and depending on if we hit a good stopping point or we have the energy to power through, we will do that. So I will definitely check in. There we go. Okay. So we're going to start with the 6-year work plan for art in public places. That was Exhibit 1 in your packet. And again, I am considering this first discussion what I'll call the release of the draft. So although you've already received it previously via email and in the published packet, tonight is really the first night that we are presenting this document to you all. As a reminder, this plan is meant to be kind of a guiding document for internal discussion and decision-making as it pertains to public art planning and development over the next 6 years, but I imagine that this document will evolve and also carry the program forward beyond the 6-year timeline. So the current draft that was included in your packet has several different sections. They are listed on the screen here: introduction, project opportunities, funding, public engagement, collection care, revising the 6-year work plan, roles and responsibilities, terms, definitions, and project types, and appendices. So for this discussion, I will kind of give a high level of what each section is. When we get to project opportunities, since that's another item or another document that was provided as a standalone document in your packet, we will kind of give a high level, but we'll save the actual discussion of individual project opportunities to later in the evening. But I will go through kind of high level what each section represents, some key deliverables that are included in the plan in each section, and then happy to take any feedback you have tonight to get that conversation going. So the first piece, and again, this is the kind of the only thing that I am officially seeking your endorsement on tonight, are the goals for the Mercer Island Public Art Programs. So you'll see that these were included in the introduction or kind of executive summary of the work plan. And since we last talked in October, we have added or proposed another goal related to sustainability. So that is shown up here in blue on your screen. It is promote and implement sustainability practices through public art creation and exhibition. Aside from that, nothing major has changed from the last time we discussed the goals. I'm happy to take some feedback right now on that proposed sustainability goal, or if I can get thumbs up, thumbs down endorsement on these, I'll make sure that they are incorporated into the final draft of the plan. And we, like other items, can kind of set the goals aside as wrapped up for now and return to them with the kind of final publishing of the plan. So, go ahead, Chair.
Just looking at the goals of the plan, I know that we have already in the wording sharing about Mercer Island's rich history, natural beauty, and local creativity with island residents and visitors, and sparking curiosity. But I think there's also an opportunity to encourage people who don't live on the island to come to Mercer Island for these events. And I just want to make sure that we don't neglect having that in the goals. Because I think getting off-island residents can be a major thing. I think we got a lot for summer celebration and we do for other events, which only goes to boost the island's economy and diversity and enriches the greater area as a whole. Any other comments or thoughts from anyone else?
I thought that was in there somewhere.
I thought it was, but it's not exactly. So I just want to make sure.
Must be somewhere else because I just read it.
Yeah, so I think to that point, it's specifically for bullet point number 3, share Mercer Island's rich history, natural beauty, and local creativity with island residents
Right.
and visitors. But the kind of specific idea of, I guess broadening that, the attraction destination piece, I think is still incorporated in the selection criteria.
Okay.
But I think this is, in terms of the goals, this is like the only mention of visitors as opposed to just residents or community members. So I'm open to trying to insert that elsewhere, or if everyone feels kind of comfortable with how the goals are written, as is or as presented here, but knowing that, we'll continue to work to make sure that projects are, appealing to local residents as well as future visitors, future residents even. So, but it's up to you if you all want to change the wording to better reflect that.
You think it's okay? Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? Yes. Councilor Harrington?
Yeah, I really appreciate you adding the sustainability piece. And I just like to add my interpretation of the word, what this word sustainability means. So I'll just read this statement as you stated it. Promote and implement sustainability practices through public art creation and exhibition. So for me, the interpretation is exhibition means to do anything that promotes sustainability, conceptually or otherwise. And that the word sustainability, as defined by the Sustainable Development Goals and the United Nations, means a long-term approach that aims to meet the needs of the present people of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, and intertwines the 3 large subject areas of economic, social, and environmental concepts and interdependence, that those are all part of the sustainability concept. I just wanted to add that for the record, that's my interpretation of what that means. But I really do appreciate, we've been working on this for a while. I really appreciate you adding that. And it sounds great.
Thank you, Councilor Harrington. I feel comfortable moving forward with the goals of the plan. Are there any other thoughts from the Arts Council? Otherwise, I'll pass it back to Sarah. All right. Thank you.
Okay. I guess, can I also get a thumbs up from everyone else if you are comfortable with moving forward with the goals as presented? Okay, terrific. Thank you. I appreciate all the work that you all have done through this process to get us to this point. This is another big milestone, so thank you. Okay. So continuing on, so the first kind of starting point for administering the public art program is the project opportunities. So the key deliverables in this section are the project opportunities list, which again, staff have defined as a dynamic list of public art opportunities that can be implemented by the city as resources allow. And then a public art project timeline, which we consider a 6-year timeline of projects that will be integrated into city budgets and CIP in the future. So again, we're going to talk about project opportunities later in the meeting, so I'm not going to actively ask for any feedback on that one yet, but I did because this is also a presentation for the community. Wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of this section in the plan.
Before moving forward,
Mhm.
Counselor Scone would like
Yeah,
to
I-
add something.
I do have a comment about that. The third bullet item, planned capital projects are eligible for and strong candidates for public art projects using 1% fund dollars. And I know what that means, but I think throughout the meeting tonight, I'm going to be like emphasizing that we have the 1%, but that's not what our goal is to spend on art in this island. You know, it's something that, it's a fund that we need to apply, but I can see that as a planning fund that we use that to do some planning or acquisition, but we need to get a art plan or art project together that we can get all kinds of funding, private funding, art funds, city funds. I just don't want the idea that, oh gee, our whole effort is 1%. So I don't know if that's appropriate to add there, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
No, that's helpful. I think when we get to that spreadsheet of the project opportunities list, we can circle back to that too and just make sure that that's accurately reflected. So, but thank you for bringing that up. That is a good point, that the 1% fund is not necessarily the only funding source that is or should be available for public art projects. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll keep going. Okay, so funding is the next section. This section outlines the funding resources available for the city's public art program, as well as provides guidance on selecting fundraising strategies for individual projects. So there's 3 key deliverables in this one. The first that you'll see is the 2023 contributions to the 1% fund, which lists the contributions that have been confirmed and completed, 2024 anticipated contributions, which lists the projects that are expected to complete construction during the current fiscal year, and what we've estimated their contribution based on the current construction contract amounts, and then the 25 to 26 CIP project contributions also anticipated, which pulls projects that are proposed in the draft CIP that's currently making its way through City Council through the annual or biennial budget process. So that could definitely change, but I just wanted to include that in there now based on what we're expecting or expect to be adopted, and really for long-range planning purposes. So I think I'll say, to your point, Councilmember Scone, of 1% money not being the only money that should be used for public art or that we should be tracking. I think part of the goal of this document in general, but also this section in funding, is to make sure that we are really tracking the 1% contributions. Not to say that we have not in the past, we have, but I think there is kind of a better internal effort we can do to make sure that we're tracking every project, making sure that we're following up, and then also for long-range planning purposes. As you'll see, you know, as we get into project opportunities, there are a lot of opportunities tied directly to forthcoming capital projects. And so knowing what to expect ahead of time from a planning purpose will help us kind of plan out for those projects as well. So based on that, is there anything in terms of the funding section that you all have feedback on right now?
I have a clarification question, because grants and other types of arts funding can be really great opportunities. Who within the staff is the person who applies for those grants? How are we getting those grants? And is there more that we can do to be proactive about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently it's based on project. So, you know, those of us who are capital project managers, depending on the projects that we're working on, we are actively pursuing grant funding. The work plan also currently has an appendix that's a running list of grant opportunities that will be updated over the life of the plan. That would be the responsibility of staff. But I think that'll be part of the conversation in terms of project development. So, some projects are better suited for deep community partnerships. Some projects are really well positioned for grants at the state level and maybe even at the federal level. So that's a piece that we will determine or discuss kind of that fundraising strategy when we're in the project development phase.
So the only question I have is that if we're basing projects on the current budget, then we're not taking into account those other funding opportunities, then we're kind of stuck in a cycle. Does that make sense?
Totally.
I mean, if we want to really go for some major project, say, oh, I don't know, arts building for performances on the island or something along those lines, for instance, right now that wouldn't look like it was in the budget, but if there was an opportunity to get something funded, so I think that we just need to make sure that we're considering different funding sources and things like that for future so that we can think outside the box, I guess, is what
Right.
I'm saying.
And so I think the way that would translate into this specific process, so I guess to give you an example, on the capital side, when we are doing our budgeting process, we are factoring in grants, even if we haven't necessarily received them yet. We are factoring in that we will be, pursuing state grants and that kind of thing. And then, if we aren't successful with the grants, that kind of dictates what we're able to do with the project. So if we didn't, say we wanted to do a Greta Hackett project like has come up in these conversations, and we went forward and said, okay, we had X amount, we want to put forward a project budget of X. We think we can get 25% of that funded in grants. Here are the grants that we're looking at. And say we only get 10% funded for grants, then that's a conversation that goes back to the city council, and we say, this is what we were able to do. City council, are you interested and able to assist us in backfilling the amount we weren't able to get in grants? Or the other side is like, okay, we have 15% of a gap to fill. Let's make a concerted effort to fundraise from the community with that. So I think at this level, in terms of the project opportunities, what we're really doing is within this process and this document is identifying what the priority is and what the project opportunities are that the Arts Council is most interested in elevating to that level of then getting to a planning level kind of estimates and things like that. So you'll notice when we get to the project opportunities, nothing has a budget number attached to it. None of these projects are budgeted in any, operations or capital budget currently. But this is really the first step then of putting forward, this is what we want to do, and this is what we think we're capable of stewarding based on the opportunities we've identified. And then it is kind of up to us to build those projects out and identify the funding sources. So, and sometimes, I guess the other thing I will say, sometimes that we do, and again, I liken this to the capital side because we do have the 1% fund that is attached to our capital program, but I think that because our capital program is very project-based, I think there's some similarities in public art planning and the capital program planning. But often, sometimes what we'll do is if we didn't receive enough grants for something, we might, choose to implement a project in phases. We might choose to move forward with just the planning so that in 2 years, when another grant comes around, we have the concept, we have the plan in place, and we're basically able to put forward a better grant application. So those are also things that we as staff plan for and work on our end. So I imagine it would be something very similar that, staff you see in this room would be the ones assisting with developing those fundraising strategies and applying for those grants and everything.
Great. Thank you for that
Very
clarification.
long response. I
No,
apologize.
that was helpful for me. And so again, with the entire 6-year work plan that we're working on, our goals are to really put forward as an Arts Council what our top priorities are, because of course, anytime you're dealing with the arts, you're dealing with a pretty tight budget. And so it's really just prioritizing those different things among ourselves. Okay, that was helpful. Just wanted clarification on the cycle of the funding. So I don't have any other questions on funding. Does anyone else before we move on?
I had a question. I had a question about the 40th and ICW, that little mini park there. Is that an actual park space? And I was wondering, does that come under, in terms of the budget, is that ICW corridor improvements, or is that some other category, the funding for that? If it is a park space, does that mean it could be a potential venue for, because it's a very visible space for some art project?
So my understanding of that space right now is that it is technically, once construction is complete and all the remediation that they've been doing, it is kind of like a pocket park space. I don't know if from a recreation standpoint, are you saying no?
I'll jump in.
Okay.
It's not necessary, I would consider that similar to how we consider our landings, so our street end landings, which are sort of these mini parks, but their primary purpose is not as a park space for that Island Crest location. My understanding was it was for transportation improvements. So that location, when we were talking park zone earlier, that location actually wouldn't be included in the park zone. Now, that's not to say that potentially that space being a public property isn't able to be utilized for a variety of purposes, and that could be hosting a piece of art or a piece of artwork there, or some other way to utilize that space. But it's that's a complicated one. It's not, our parks team does manage it, but we don't manage it like a park space. It's more of a transportation improvement area.
So my understanding as a person who drives in that area a lot is that it was to make visibility more clear on that corner, because that is a very, very busy corner, especially in the mornings and after school lets out. That being said, that there's an opportunity for some horticulture art that wouldn't block perhaps, or something like that. But I don't think that that there would be a place to put a building or something like that there, because my understanding is that the whole reason the lot exists is for visibility. So if you put a building there, then you lose your
Or
visibility.
distraction.
Right. Or yeah, so, but that's an excellent question. I'm also curious to know what was eventually going to happen with that Arts Council. Maybe we need to step up. Any other questions on funding before we move on? All right. Thank you, Sarah. I'll pass it back to you.
Okay. Okay, the next big section, public engagement, documents how the city will engage the community in the public art process. So this is everything from community participation in project development, including soliciting for project ideas from the community, activating public art sites to cultivate stronger connections with public art in those spaces with the community, and then communicating our progress and success. Communicating out the progress of the work plan that is ultimately identified through this process, as well as any other updates that we can put out there for the community in terms of public art. So the key deliverables or components of this section, they're broken into three pieces. The community collaboration to develop public art identifies preferred methods for community participation in some of those big buckets, including idea generation, project development, artists and artwork selection, and then project implementation, including active art making. Public art activation documents methods for digital and in-person engagement. And then communicating progress and achievements, that section documents channels for ongoing and project-specific public art communications. So the thing I will say about this section, that is a little bit different than the project opportunities section or the funding section, is that this is a little less time-based. So while we can, certainly continue to update this as new ideas come forward for, a new platform comes forward for how to disseminate information or activate people, or activate sites with public art, or activate existing public art sites. Like, we can definitely update that. But I would say that things like, identifying the process for how we're going to solicit for ideas from the community, whether it's a call for artists or anything like that, I wouldn't necessarily document in this section. This is more meant to document and confirm that it is a priority of the city and the Arts Council to engage the community in these various ways with public art. And, you know, you'll probably notice if you have already read through the section that there is a lot of use of methods may include, but are not limited to. So I think that's one thing to just really keep in mind, that there is an element of project-specific community engagement and collaboration that's going to happen. And I think that will go back again to the project opportunities of, you know, thinking a mural at the lid might be a great opportunity for huge community art making and activity, whereas, you know, another big landform sculpture like the Source might be something that's a little bit different. So just to keep that in mind, that there will still be ample opportunity on a project-specific basis, especially in terms of developing projects and soliciting for artwork.
Just a quick comment to that, Sarah, as we're talking about sustainability being a priority and things like that, I do find that the mailers are very helpful ways to get people to respond. But then, of course, you're using paper and trees and everything else. And so I just thought I'd sort of throw in there, as you've already talked about what a great resource story is. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That there could be an opportunity there if people are already using that for feedback within that app. And I don't know how that all works, but I'm wondering if that could be a way that we could get more feedback from the community without having to, you know, kill more trees.
Yeah.
So that's just a thought to kind of put within the guidelines of our priorities. That being said, I think we did especially he's not here tonight, but Daniel and Suzanne did a fabulous job with the medallions and the feedback from the community on that project. And so we also should take a look at how we've engaged and what was successful in the past. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one thing I wanted to bring up on this public engagement section, I think it's important to acknowledge how we partner with local organizations. And I didn't necessarily see that in here, but I do recall when I think there was a Parks and Rec kind of report out of how we did, and there were different levels to that, where there was, you know, we're hosting events with fully engaged, or there's somebody else is hosting an event, we're contributing the space, and what those different levels are and different ways that we do interact with kind of those non-Mercer Island government entities. But I think that's an important piece of this public engagement.
And we did have the Arts Summit several years ago. I don't know if it's time to circle back around to another one of those. It would be nice to see, for instance, the upcoming Mercer Island lighting celebration, you know, what different community groups are involved. I know there's going to be some dance studios there. I know there's some collaboration with the school district, which is another priority that we've put forth. So we'll have a choir and something other. See, I need this on a list. So yes, I agree with you. And I think that there is a piece of it already there. Maybe we just need a slightly more visual, you know, ability to see that and find that connection. So, was there any other thoughts or comments about the public engagement part? Yes.
I have a couple of thoughts. The first point is that in this section, there is Appendix C. It's the guideline for administrating the Mercer Island Public Art Program. And because this 6-year work plan is a living document, and while this guideline, it seems should exist beyond that time frame. So I feel like it might be better it be an independent document, not just included in this work plan. And my second thought is that for discussion is about the community role in artists and artwork selection. I noticed there is in this panel, there will be a general resident. And in the current policy, I also saw there is a layperson. But you did a good, Sarah did a good job, like adding to solicit the broad community feedback. So in that case, if we're going to get the broad community feedback, is it necessary to get a layperson? I'm not sure, like in that artist selection, like a panel, there will be, should we add a layperson or should we, since we are going to have the solicit the broad community's feedback? So,
So are you looking at the community role and artist artwork selection that there's a resident with special interest and then a general resident, and you're asking whether that person is necessary, or are you asking if we should add an additional person?
I'm asking whether that person is necessary and what's the experience before, how that work?
How that person is selected?
Yeah, how
Okay.
was it used, helpful?
Do we have guidelines for how the person is selected, Sarah, or is it more of people, if someone steps up to volunteer?
Yeah, it's not really that specific. The current guidelines, I think, just say, or honestly, I don't even remember. They currently stipulate that the city council has to approve the actual selection panel, but typically we have done that in the past. So I would say, for instance, like with the Medallions project, we formed the committee of folks who were going to join us from the Arts Council to participate in the selection panel. We asked the two members from the Arts Council who were in that panel to recommend other individuals, specifically individuals from the community. So, you know, knowing that you all know more people than we do, for sure. So I think it worked out pretty well this last time to do that, but I don't know. I mean, to Councilmember Rajagopal's point, I don't know if it's necessary to also engage a general resident on the selection panel if we are already doing broad kind of community input. But I think it is one of those things where we're never necessarily prohibiting ourselves from adding more people.
Right, and the
So-
wording of it says that per the process, community members may participate. It doesn't say that they must participate. So my understanding is it gives us that open place if we wanted to bring in a community member outside of, you know, the Arts Council or other people. But it doesn't say we must. Is that a correct understanding of the wording? It's very lawyery sounding. But I like the idea of having the option to bring in an outside member, especially if we were, for instance, doing a project that was really deeply based in Mercer Island history, and we were to bring in one of the authors of the book on the history of Mercer Island. That would be an excellent opportunity or place to bring them in. So I think that the more feedback we can get from the community, the better. But I do appreciate your question in that. So is that clear that it's not that we have to bring in a community member, but it leaves us with the opportunity to?
Yeah, I agree. I just want to clarify and get to know how the previous experience about this adding because I noticed we are going to have the broad community feedback. That would be very helpful too.
Yeah, I agree. So yes, Councilor Scone.
Well, I mean, I noticed that too, and right now I can't find it in my packet, but this is the one that says the 1 to 2 Arts Council members. And that occurred to me too, that I don't even necessarily think I think the more vague we keep it, the better, because if it's a $200,000 project that's right in this, very visible and maybe has some concerns or whatever, we want more participation. But if it's, well, let's get that vase for the shelf,
Do we all
I
need to
mean,
vote?
maybe a couple of Arts Council or maybe a couple lay persons want to weigh in on that. So I didn't want to limit, for me, I didn't want to limit it to 1 or 2 Arts Council people, just because for one thing, it gives us as Art Council members and future ones to kind of build our skills.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that I built some skills doing the medallion project and I felt like when we were looking for community members for that, it was difficult to find them.
Mhm.
And that's how I recall. I think I offered up a few names and
Mhm.
people are busy. And so, I mean, I think we always just want to be as inclusive as possible. And I think we want to kind of size the committee that it's functional. But I mean, if people want to participate, yeah, I think the more the merrier.
So perhaps changing it from 1 to 2 Arts Council members to a subcommittee from the Arts Council, then that gives us an opportunity to appoint how many people we think is appropriate per project. Does that sound like a
Yeah,
better
something
way to
like
word
that.
that?
And then maybe as far as the public, you know, gauging the public interest, you know, and allowing, you know, as much public participation
Yeah,
as
and ways
functional.
and ways to engage them. Like that's why I mentioned possibly the use of story or, you know, a QR code that we put up at the major events that people can give feedback on how did you like the event and what would you like to see more of or less of or added, et cetera. Could be another opportunity for that. So, but I agree with you in keeping things more vague, allowing for more flexibility within individual projects. Also, that being said, that when we do have subcommittees, the subcommittee themselves is doing work outside of the meetings and then coming back and getting feedback from the entire Arts Council. So I think it's really important to remember that it's not just, you know, 1 or 2 people making the decisions, but doing a lot of the background work and then coming back and bringing it to the Arts Council, or making a decision, for instance, when the event subcommittee voted on the artwork for the previous summer celebration, that the Arts Council agreed that those people would specifically make the selection and everyone was on board with that. So I think it's important to remember that even when we do have subcommittees or certain members of the Arts Council going and working on things, that they're still going to come back and present to the whole Arts Council and get feedback on that. Is that?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Another question? Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, I
Please.
have another 2 thoughts. One is in the community role in art making. I think this is quite exciting. And on the
Irene, could you?
sorry.
That's okay. Could you just when you turn towards us, we
Pull it
can hear
over.
you, but when you look away towards the book, I'm having a hard time.
Just
hearing.
pull it in.
So just
Sure.
put your mic a little closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
So in the second, in the
Perfect.
section, community art, community role in art making, I think this is quite exciting and it represents what we have discussed. And just a technical drafting perspective, like when developing public art projects, the city should consider the opportunities. And I would like here to add the city and in consultation with Arts Council. It's just because I think we would love to involve in that discussion about the art making in community.
Well, so under community role, it does say that city staff and the Arts Council will identify the best methods. Let's see, that's in project development. Which section are you?
It's the community role in art making.
Sorry, Ann.
7.
Okay, yes, I see. Oh,
Mhm.
so you just want to change the wording and add the city and Arts Council?
Yeah.
But I mean, my only question against that is, and I appreciate your clarification on this, is that the city council is making these decisions based on what the Arts Council has already presented to them. Isn't that correct? Or, I mean, maybe our liaison from the city council can weigh in on that. Or Sarah.
Go ahead.
Or
What I was just gonna say is that I think in this document, if you see the city referenced versus staff or staff in the Arts Council, the city is kind of us, a general entity, you as an advisory board, us as staff, and the city council working on behalf of the broader community.
I
So I know that I think there are specific spots in the plan, and I this is a good point that you bring this up, just to make sure to review for clarity as well, where, we do stipulate this is what city staff will do in consultation with the Arts Council, things like coordinating workshops and things like that. But that is a good point. I think when I drafted that, my thought was that it would definitely be staff in the Arts Council working together with the city council as well when we get to projects. So, but I'll make sure that it's clear in the document.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Did you have another
for-
comment?
Yeah, I just think also the public art activation, I really like all those ideas. And it looks like it will take some human resource from the city. I just want to say, like, if you need any help from Arts Council or anything we can do to help, like, just let us know. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or feedback, or
Keep it moving.
I think we can keep moving.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the other sections in the draft work plan are identified here. The collection care, which documents collection management tasks that are primarily overseen by city staff. I think that's pretty clear in the document before you right now. Revising the 6-year work plan. This is just kind of, I think it's a best practice with any planning document to kind of outline the process for updating and engaging each other on a rolling basis to keep it dynamic and living. Roles and responsibilities that compiles specific staff and Arts Council responsibilities as they are outlined within this work plan. So it's specific to stewarding the public art process, not necessarily all encompassing. I know you have your bylaws that also identify roles and responsibilities for the Arts Council, which is a little more general or high level. And then terms, definitions, and public art project types, all exactly what they say. This is effectively just public art terms and project types that are relevant to the implementation of this public art process. And then, of course, there are appendices, and I did not list them out here, but we can talk about those through this process. I think the one comment that relates to that, Councilmember Rajagopal referenced including whether to include the guidelines for administering the public art program, which we will talk more about either tonight or in January, including them in this work plan document or as a standalone document. And my only response to that is that they are a standalone document. The guidelines will go to the city council at the end of this planning process to be formally approved and adopted based on your recommendation. Currently, they're just kind of set up as a reference in the work plan. So whereas the work plan may evolve over time, every several years we'll update it. We likely will not undertake that regular of an update to the guidelines unless we are implementing them and identify that something is very off. So just wanted to clarify that it will be a standalone document.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So on that note, then, is there any kind of high-level feedback or input you want to share tonight about these other sections? I know these ones are a little more focused on really documenting current practice. Again, as this document started to come together, it really started evolving into kind of a hybrid work plan. We have some action items or pieces that will evolve over time, things that will need to be updated, like, the project opportunities, the funding, documentation, but then, collection care. I think that it would be really wonderful to have a resource that anyone outside of the city, anyone who comes in the future, whether they have strong public art knowledge or not, would be able to pick up this document and know, okay, this is how the city manages their public art program, and this is how I can continue managing it on behalf of the city and the Arts Council. I'll stop there.
I don't for this evening have any comments on the other sections. Do any other Arts Council members have thoughts or comments?
So for the care and maintenance of art, do we have a plan of kind of forecasting what's on the horizon of what needs to be and what kind of funding? And how far out is that horizon?
Yeah, so our current maintenance plan is more like a 3-year maintenance plan. It's structured as sort of a low, medium, high priority, and we tackle the priorities every year using that public art line item, maintenance line item that is budgeted every year. So I think the way that will look is that staff are continuing to track and update that process for our routine maintenance. And then for the more sort of one-off projects, we did the mosaics earlier this year. We're planning on still restoring the totem out at Roanoke Park. Those bigger items would be items that if we know them right now, like the source restoration, which was included in the project opportunities list, we know that's one that we can plan out for something that might come up. Say we have a piece, something happens to a piece, or we need to get something emergency restored. That would likely look like just a separate project that city staff would have to come to the Arts Council to present. And then it would be kind of weighing, okay, but we have our public art plan, we have our work plan that we're working on. Is it worth it to remove and restore this piece and reinstall it, or do we want to hold off on that for a few years while we implement these other projects?
Yeah, I just had one question here. So we have the list of public art project types. And it looks like a comprehensive list, but there could be something will come up that we haven't thought of. So would there be an option to add something that's not on this list?
Mhm.
Maybe just some statement that allows us to add something else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the plan accounts for that right now is actually in the revising the 6-year work plan section. There's a little bit of a caveat at the beginning of that section that outlines, a couple elements that wouldn't necessarily require major Arts Council endorsement or participation to develop. So something like, updating the grants listing list, updating the public art terms as new project ideas come forward. Those will definitely be rolling pieces of this that in the same way we would do a review to correct grammar and typos, we could do a review to update to just align with the industry as well. Okay.
Would like to have this council to discuss about the section roles and responsibilities on page 12. That is the very detailed responsibilities list. So I think maybe we can spend a little bit time on that based on previous practice and experience. Because I'm the newest member of this council, so I would like to listen all your experience about that. And I noticed that the city code and bylaws have already set up the Arts Council's duties and jurisdictions. So I think that would be a baseline to set up if it's necessary to have this section. If any of you have any comments on this section.
So I just want to clarify the question you're asking. Are you saying that you don't feel that roles and responsibilities section needs to be in the 6-year work plan? Is that what you're asking? Or are you asking for clarification on what the Arts Council role is within the 6-year plan?
Yeah, these are 2 layers. I just want to have our meeting discuss about these 2 questions, whether this section is necessary, or if it's necessary, whether those detailed responsibilities like a good to go.
Yes, Suzanne, please.
Yeah, I thought it was really handy I've been probably the longest member here. And from years ago, that was always a point of confusion, like who's doing what and what are our responsibilities. And I really appreciated staff putting this together, and I thought it was pretty comprehensive. And it resonates with what I think the roles and responsibilities are.
Yeah, I appreciate Suzanne is the longest Arts Council member and appreciate that, you know, the feedback that it is comprehensive enough. And I appreciate the fact that it's in the packet as well, because that is something else that I sort of jumped in to Arts Council in the middle of COVID, and we had a mass exodus, and I was sort of thrown in, didn't really know what I was doing. And so this list, I think, is actually really, really helpful to have in there. Yes. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, do you think there's some kind of contradiction or contradictory statements that are here as opposed to other city documents? Is there anything here you think doesn't match up with other city documents that you looked at?
Not necessary. I think it's just like I feel Arts Council can do a little bit more than that.
Did you?
Well, no, it's one of my favorite sections.
I think it's very comprehensive. I guess we could ask staff to take a look at the other Arts Council role guidelines in our, I guess, would that be in our handbook and our bylaws? Just to make sure that we are not contradicting anything, and come back at the next meeting and clarify that. Would that be possible?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Definitely
With
do
that,
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds good. Yeah,
excellent.
Thank you.
Great.
Did you have another comment? No, okay. Any other comments or thoughts as we look at the final sections?
Okay.
I'm-
Hearing none. Okay. Great. Okay, so next steps for this, of course, again, this was the official release tonight of this draft work plan document. We will return at the January meeting on January 15th to consider or continue the discussion. So what I am asking is that, between now and the end of the year, as you have time to, and if you haven't already had time to go through the document and any other feedback you have, whether it's something that was missing, something you thought was going to be in the work plan, anything about general structure as well as content, please send that to me directly by Monday, December 30th, and then that will help us refine that second draft and bring it forward on the 15th for continued discussion.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Would it be possible for you to send a follow-up
Yes.
email
Yes.
with the deadline for us? That is always
Yes.
helpful.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Because there will be a couple other deadlines, so I, of course, will follow up with you all after this.
Fabulous. Thank you.
So this is our first kind of stopping point or pausing point. How's everybody feeling? The next conversation is project opportunities, which I think is probably the most fun part. So if we want to keep it moving. Okay.
Sarah, I'll just add, we did turn up the heat.
It
It was a little chilly in here. It's starting to work. That's always a good sign for the Mercer Island Community Center.
It literally felt like the AC was on. So I was like, what is happening? I see like.
I put,
Yeah,
Thank you,
Suzanne's over
Raven.
here, like, wrapping a jacket around herself like a blankie.
I was gonna loan
It's
it to
getting
you.
chilly. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Okay, so let's get into those project opportunities. So again, the project opportunity list is part of the project opportunity section of the work plan. The list is meant to be a dynamic running list of project opportunities that come forward. And I think maybe just a little background on that idea is as a body, as the city, as staff, and I know city council often receives ideas about projects. We need a kind of a repository where those projects can go to live until we're able to consider whether or not to take them off the list and move them forward. Of course, there may be times when, a project comes forward to the city council and they want to direct the Arts Council to move forward with it, which would of course be well within their purview to do. So then, at that point, we would look at our work plan for public art and determine, where we can fit things in and what may need to shift. But the project opportunity list is the starting point. It is the place in the future as we solicit ideas from the community. That's where things will live. And I imagine that, while it's 26 project opportunities on the list tonight, that will evolve over time and definitely grow. The other piece of this is the 6-year project timeline. So when we last discussed this section of the plan back in October, there was a lot of discussion or question about how we translate the opportunities into actionable projects. So really, that's kind of a process we're going to start tonight, right now. I think in the future, what it will look like which is outlined in the work plan right now. Every year ahead of the city's biennial budget and capital improvement planning process, we will convene a workshop with the Arts Council to first look at the existing project timeline. It's a 6-year timeline that we're proposing. So, as years go by, projects may become non-viable. We may have gotten a new opportunity that it meant, it was a good time to move up a project. So the project timeline may also be a little fluid as well. But I think going forward, that'll kind of be the actionable work plan in the sense of what is actually being implemented in terms of a project. It will live on that project timeline, and then from there be incorporated into future city budgets and capital improvement programs. So that's kind of the step from project opportunity list to project we propose to the city council for approval. Tonight, so what we've presented or put forth is a list of 26 project opportunities, which were included as Exhibit 2. These are projects or ideas that have come forth from Arts Council members, other city council members, the community, and staff over time. And based on our last meeting, staff went in and reviewed each opportunity against several factors. So provided a high-level evaluation of items to consider. You'll notice there's maybes in there, there's it depends in there, but you'll start to see kind of the different categories that we would weigh these projects against in terms of what may help you to determine whether to move it off the project opportunity list or into the project timeline. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second and shift over to the actual project list document.
Sorry, we're
Do you-
just clarifying that we're looking at the right thing.
Oh, okay.
Because I had the actual project list document up, and then I wasn't seeing the other categories that you mentioned.
Gotcha. So that,
I'm sorry.
I
We're
will,
good. We can, yeah.
okay, perfect. Okay.
Okay, so I had it. That's right.
Yeah. So there's two ways we can first go through the entire project opportunity list. We can go through this kind of portion, which just includes who it was proposed by, what the general project idea is, and comments. Or we can go to kind of the more robust one, which includes those different categories. I would suggest if people are familiar enough with the ideas that were included on the list, that we start here as opposed to walking through kind of more of the comments and ideas, but I'm happy to start with kind of that bigger, more information heavy here's what the project might actually look like piece if you all want to.
Mhm.
You want to start with the beginning?
No, I want to start with this one where
one?
they've kind of,
Okay with starting
Is everyone okay with that? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just gonna start going through each of these. If I think what I'll do is I will say the project idea and the summary and the relevant pillars, and then ask if you all want further discussion or if you need further clarification, and then we can continue going into the other pieces of that. If you feel like you don't need further clarification, or you're not ready to discuss or don't feel like you need to discuss an individual item right now, we can just kind of say it, put it on the list, and then keep moving. So I will ask for the cues, but I'm just in an attempt to not make this so we are just reading off a list, going line by line, but still making sure we capture at least some discussion of each item. That's, I think, how will be the best place to start. So first project idea, transform the Greta Hackett Outdoor Sculpture Gallery into Mercer Island's premier all-season destination. Brief summary is imagine the Outdoor Sculpture Gallery as a vibrant all-season hub that caters to people of all ages, interests, and abilities. The relevant 4 public art pillars that staff identified for this one are place, connection, and longevity. Is this an item that you all want to have some more discussion about right now, or keep moving on the list?
So can you clarify the goal of going through each of these items and what you want to accomplish tonight?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So I think first pass, go through each item if there's interest in that. It's an opportunity for individual Arts Council members who feel very excited about a project to speak to it right now. It's an opportunity for Arts Council members who are confused or need more clarification to ask those questions now. And if you have a really hard aversion to an idea, that's also an opportunity to talk about it now. What we are getting towards and what the banners you see on the wall to the right of you in the room with us is kind of at the end of this first pass and discussion. You all have stickers at your stations on the dais, and I am going to ask you to get up and place a sticker on each item. I'll go through the colors again, but the 3 colors, pink is remove, orange is keep on the list, and green is elevate. So elevate to the public art project timeline. We're going to go through those again. I'll have them up there on the screen, but just so you know where we're getting to, we're going to discuss each item as a group. Then you'll have an opportunity based on the discussion to give your first reaction by placing your dots. And then at the next meeting, we will revisit kind of the dot exercise based on everyone's thoughts. Is that helpful? Okay. All right. So if you need clarification on Transform Greta Hackett Outdoor Sculpture Gallery, oh, excuse me. If you want to speak to it because it's something you're very excited about, if it's something that you do not feel is right for the community or within the parameters of this draft work plan that we've put forward, this discussion time is the best time to say that now. Right? Yeah, go.
all right. Well, you all know I'm passionate about this. I think it's, the timing is perfect. We have the Link Light Rail opening in a year. It's in our town center. It's just such an opportunity to work with businesses, with the private sector. And I noticed that under candidate for other funding, you have maybe, which that's realistic, but I think for sure, I think we can get community to, if we do some planning around it, do these art rooms, that performance rooms. I could see where community members or businesses would want to take ownership of different parts. I'm excited to see it as a lighted, all-weather, perhaps solar lights, maybe moving windmill type things, I mean, we can just, it's kind of endless. And I think one of my inspirations for that is the Rose Kennedy Greenway in Boston. They have a tagline, "Make today an adventure." And I would love to see it be an adventure there for the children that live downtown in the apartments. I see it as opportunity to connect somehow, pushing it along the way down to Luther Burbank. Tons of opportunities for gathering the community, which is one of our goals. I mean, there can be a glow in the park, a gala on the Greenway. We already have art on court, food trucks, athletic events, maybe a ice skating rink temporarily in the winter. So I could go on and on and on, but I am so excited about this, and I think it's so diverse and able to be parceled out that I think it's something that we can take on. And maybe it gets different portions get funded over various years. So I'm really excited. And if I was working on this right now, I would engage a private or a consultancy to work with the public to gather ideas of what they would like to see there. And also, not only structurally, but programming wise. And that would be a landscape urban planning consultant, park planning consultant. And I think once I want to see the visioning, if we choose to go with this project, the visioning sooner than later, and to bring out the public, to get them engaged in this. And I think it could really bring our community together.
I have a question, and I don't know if you've thought of this, not that it's your job, but how do we make it all season, all weather friendly?
You have like pergolas that are covered.
That are covered,
Yeah,
okay.
so the walkways would be covered and it could be, I mean, you do like light here in this environment, but they would be like plexiglass or that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
also shade is important in the summer
Mhm.
too. So maybe some sections are shaded and solid, some are trellis,
Mhm.
and the light is coming through in different forms,
Right.
it changes seasonally. But I think, and then, now with LED lights and solar panel. So there might be some of them that maybe the whole walkway is a solar panel,
Right.
which
So-
would be really, really exciting, and people could charge their phones there. Yeah.
Yeah, my biggest thing I think is, because we do live in the Seattle area and we do get a significant amount of
Yeah,
rain.
no, I think
is
light
how do we,
and cover, both shade, rain,
Mhm.
heat are
Yes.
all things that we need to take into consideration.
Fabulous. And then my other question is parking. And do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, the
Because
city
I-
is building a new parking lot at Tully's. So
Okay.
that's gonna
That'll
open that
help.
up. Plus, I mean, I'm really encouraging the use of, non-individual cars. So we want to use the light rail. We want people to come here and experience it, but we want our, I mean, that would
Right.
be the non-resident thing that you talked about earlier.
Okay.
So,
And you see this as, you mentioned, because obviously when we talk about a sculpture gallery, I think more of the visual, art, but you're picturing it as all types of art forms. You said something about like maybe little mini stages. Can you, give some more?
well, I think it would be a linear gallery. I mean, I think, again, you could look at the Rose Kennedy Greenway online.
Yeah.
And they have temporary art, they have permanent art, they have performances, they have, it's pretty endless.
Very cool. Oh, yeah, I'm seeing that. Okay. And then if we are taking and looking at this, but we're also looking at the another focus being Mercerdale. So we have several different parks. So my only other question would be just sort of maybe a discussion among the Arts Council, or if you have feedback for this, is how do we prioritize whether we want to focus on the Greta Hackett Outdoor Sculpture Gallery versus Mercerdale Park versus Luther Burbank Park? Because I mean, they're all amazing ideas, but what would make it the priority to focus on the Greta Hackett as opposed to some of the other park renovations?
So I guess we're gonna kind of vote on them, right?
Right, and I'm
And-
not saying like that we need to make a decision. I'm just
Mhm.
asking for feedback
Mhm,
and collaboration in the conversation.
I think for me that the Greta Hackett rises to the, I mean, it's just speaking my part is
That's what I want
rises to
to
the
hear.
stop right now because of the light rail coming in 1 year.
Right.
You know, and so we're gonna have a lot of people, and we want our residents to use the light rail, and we want them to have joy and curiosity and engagement when they come through that part of town. So I just think it's a timing issue for me. And then part of it's gonna be torn up because of developing the parking with the Tulleys. They've already taken out some of the sculptures, right? So it just, you know, you're trying to use your assets wisely. And so if we have if they have electrical contractor there to add lighting for the parking lot, we want lighting in our sculpture garden.
Right.
So I'm not trying to take away anything from the sculpture garden. I want to build on the sculpture garden and make it more accessible with, you know, wider sidewalks, covered sidewalks. So that, and it, by the way, it looks great down there. I love the lights. Thank you. Yeah.
So I just wanted, you said we can make statements in support.
Mhm.
So I just like to second everything that Councilor Scone said. And I think it is a premier location. I'm thinking about tourism, actually. If you think about different elements that a good tourist location has in terms of accessibility, and then accessibility to transportation and places to eat. And I could see little 2-hour free walk around Mercer Island city center tours, and there's safety issues that would be alleviated. You know, if you're trying to walk your dog, you know, late at night, you know, through that area is, it's kind of scary. And this would really make it safe. So I think this really is, for me, should be the top priority, just agreeing with Councilor Scone, because of all the elements being there and the light rail. Comparing this light rail stop to others, I've been to all of them, and
Really.
most of them don't have much. You know, we can really don't have to do too much to make ourselves appealing. And so it's a good economic development opportunity for the community.
Great. And just for the record, I like all of the ideas that Councilor Scone put forth on the plan. I just thought it would be good to kind of get a little more clarification. And
Yeah, no, and to
and
your point, I
those.
mean, we are going to just have to make choices. And one of my other recommendations, I think the stage in Mercerdale really engaged the community this summer, and I'd like to see that too. So, yeah, we'll just have to make some choices. And I don't know if that's a possibility to have the stage back next year or rent it or have a permanent stage. But
Permanent.
anyway, that's for discussion.
Awesome. I don't have any other questions about the first one. I just, really appreciate all of your enthusiasm and feedback.
Okay.
I did want to add a couple comments. I think one of my concerns with this site in particular is kind of its general location on the edge of the city center instead of closer to where the retail is. I don't think there's much we can do about that, but the opportunity to think big like this item is kind of going towards and being able to really implement programming into there and activate the space or design the space or, you know, put something there that allows for programming to take place and draw people into that part of town, which otherwise is maybe hard to get to. I think that's where it starts to make sense for me. I think from a kind of process standpoint of how this would work, I think we've got a really good framework on how we're going to go pursue funding and for different aspects of this. I would support that we elevate this to the point where we have conceptual plans or concepts that are developed enough to actually go after grants and go after, so that we're actually in a position to,
Yeah.
go get the money for it. So getting the concept is the first step before you can actually go find the sources.
Right. And then the other consideration being that we have to coordinate with WestDOT, which can be complicated, complex.
And yeah, I second that. I feel very excited about this project, and I feel like it can be an art hub for Mercer Island. And maybe we can even create like artist residence program for performing artists, also visual artists, to have some display exhibition there. It will be good.
Yeah, to your point, I do see that that could be the beginning of the building block of an art community. So we're part of the comp plan, and I kind of weighed in on that a little bit. I mean, what could we do that other communities can't? And I think there's an opportunity in Puget Sound region now to have a real art-focused community. And if this our public gallery got built out, I can imagine that other private galleries would come along. And would be a reason for people to come to Mercer Island. So.
Great. Any other thoughts on this first project idea?
Okay, great, wonderful discussion. Number 2. We got a lot to get through, but this is great. I think some of these will go more quickly than others. This is a mural at Aubrey Davis Park basketball courts. The summary is a mural implemented by local artists and kids. The relevant 4 pillars per staff are place and connection. And I think the other piece to probably just note for this one is that it was proposed by a community member who had reached out to the Arts Council earlier this year. So at this time, is there any clarification, continued discussion that you want to have on this one, or keep moving?
This is different than the painting the stacks, right?
Correct.
This is separate. Okay, that is my only clarification. Thank you.
Okay, great. Third item, refresh the town center banners. This idea was to update the existing banners that are installed on the light poles in town center. The relevant pillars are place and connection. And this one was also put forth by a community member.
I'll weigh in a little bit on that. Yeah, the banners are a little tired that we have now. I would look at this as an opportunity to maybe do some signage other than banners, because banners, there's a clutter issue. You know, you've got all your A boards, and you've got your signs on businesses, and then you've got the banners. So I would take a look at this, but I've seen communities that have a consistent signage in their downtown that can be art itself. Like they'll have a little, I don't know what you call it, little hanging sign, and each business has a similar sign, and they make them fun. Like if it's a veterinary clinic, it's a puppy dog, or if it's a taekwondo studio, it's a taekwondo guy. And I think that's really fun. And I think that's worth looking at. And maybe staff can come back with some ideas about that. So I guess in a way, I'm not 100% on adding new banners. They fade out and they don't look too good after a while.
My comment on it would be that I don't know if anybody's ever seen, but there's this one section in Vancouver in BC that updates their banners with what the next event is going to be in town. And I love that. And I don't know if there's a way to have, the same banner every year for summer celebration, but then just have the date changed on it, or something like that. So we're still sticking within that sustainability. But I think that, yes, we have sandwich boards and we have so many different signs all over town, and it is overwhelming. It would be amazing to have, at least for city events, a consistency that promotes the next city event. I think that would be an amazing way to go with the banners.
I think for the A boards, I think we need to nail it down. I mean, if you're a business and you've got 50 feet, you get one sign. And if maybe you're 500 feet, you get 2 signs or something. Somehow we have to nail this down. And then I think you guys have done a pretty good job with the parking now that's public parking. And I think that looks better and professional, better than, you know, what it looked before. So I think that whole thing could be worked maybe with signage, and I know the sign ordinance that probably could use a little updating, so.
That sounds like a city council job to me.
Yeah, that's not our.
That sounds like
that's
not
a
my
planning
problem.
commission job.
Sounds like not something I want to
Yeah,
be
no,
responsible
not
for,
us.
but yes, I agree. And it's one of those things because obviously a lot of the sandwich boards are advertising things in the community, which I think are important, but then we go back to a singular place to put community events and that circles back around to that.
It'd be fun
So-
if we could just like move these, you know, if we could just move them. But anyway, that's what that you guys are gonna do. So anyway.
So that would be my only comment on the banner is that it would be great to use them to promote city events as they
Okay.
come. Any other thoughts?
Okay.
Moving on.
Okay, the next one, community art making project. So I think this is a little more general than some of the other more specific things we've talked about so far, but the summary, collaborate with the community to develop and implement a small scale permanent public art installation. The relevant pillars we've identified are aesthetic and connection. And if you want a little more information about this or need clarification, now's the chance.
I think when I read this kind of is somewhat reiterating some of the ways that we've articulated the public engagement section.
Mhm.
So I think that's in our plan, just in a different way.
Yeah.
So I think my stance on this item would be to remove it because it's covered separately. Unless there was a location tied to it or a more specificity to make it, yeah.
I concur.
Okay.
And good use of specific. Nope. It's not gonna come out. Any other thoughts on that or?
I would like to clarify, like, a community art making project, shall we just limit to the visual art, like installation, or it be also like the broad, like the performing art, like other events?
Yeah, I think that through this process, you all have definitely identified that you're not just interested in visual arts in the public realm, but performance as well. So, you know, and I think Councilmember Weinberg has brought up as well in the past, you know, commissioning a performing arts piece or things like that. That's a project, you know, specifically, I think to get back to the funding side that Councilmember Scone brought up earlier. The 1% ordinance is very specific that it funds visual artworks. And so performing arts is something, while fully on board with pursuing it and developing projects, it would be one of those ones that we'd have to identify an alternative funding source, but not the end of the world by any means. Okay, keep going. Okay. So the next one, back to the outdoor gallery is, oops, sorry, outdoor gallery golf. This idea is to activate the outdoor sculpture gallery with pop-up mini golf holes designed by an artist or inspired by artworks in the public art collection. This is connected to place and connection with the 4 pillars. And I think based on some of the conversations you were having earlier about the Greta Hackett Sculpture Gallery, it doesn't necessarily mean this idea over another. I think in terms of talking about space activation, this could potentially just stay as an idea for space activation in the future, but happy to provide clarification or.
I just want you to know that mini golf is the only kind of golf I can play. And that is all. It seems like it kind of flows into a little bit into they're both Greta Hackett focused ideas. So I don't know if it's something that could be incorporated in or if if it should be left separate. That would be my only thoughts.
It's just you know,
It's just a
we're
use
just
of-
gathering these ideas and we don't have to, you know, I mean, I think that would fit under the programming umbrella at Greta Hackett, and it's a great idea. And I hope that the community finds other ideas similar, and add to our list.
Okay.
Great.
If I may, so we have a lot of parks on the island, they're bigger than Greta Hackett. Seems that maybe they could also be conceivably used for some kind of golf event. I don't know if they have been,
Mini golf,
mini golf,
very specific.
but Greta Hackett's even small, even for mini golf. So, but yeah, I agree. Don't necessarily have to specifically hold this one out as something that is like a separate special project that we need to keep on the list.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is the Aubrey Davis Park Stacks project. And this idea came forward from a private community member, I believe, back in 2022 or so. The Parks and Recreation Commission and the Arts Council both received information about this project idea, but it hasn't really gone anywhere. It's kind of sat on the shelf. So the idea was to transform the stacks area into a gathering place, including painting the stacks and installing portable seating, pathways, a stage, something like that. This connects to aesthetic, place, and connection. And I think right now, really, the question is just, is this an idea that the Arts Council would be interested in trying to pursue again? Bringing it off the shelf.
I think it would be worth circling back because it was a private donor who had offered it. We did get some very, very strong feedback against it, but I don't know that that is the entire community's representation or just several people who didn't like the idea. So I think that it would be worth just sort of circling back and possibly getting community feedback on it. I think it sounded like a nice idea personally, but
Yeah.
I also think that it would just be the right thing to do, just circle back and let the private donor know one way or the other.
Right, and I would second that. Well, first of all, we need to know if the private donor is still interested. And I'm not sure, did we even, as the Arts Council,
Mm-mm.
ever see any visuals? So people were attacking it without even
Knowing what it was gonna
knowing
look
what
like.
it was. And
Yeah.
I think if you reached out with its intent and purpose and, aesthetics, I think the greater community would be very interested. And if the donor is still interested, I definitely would be in support of this. I mean, what an opportunity.
I agree. Yeah, so I think it's definitely worth circling back to. I think we are the only people who were on the Arts Council at the time that it was
Yeah.
presented. But it was, again, it was more of just a broad idea, and we did get some very strongly worded emails after that meeting against it. But again, I don't know that that is the entire community's perspective. So I think it's worth investigating more. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
And yeah, maybe we could just ask the donor if they're willing to consider other concepts. Or they just are really set on this
Well, that's a
one
great idea.
specific approach, because it's a great venue opportunity in general. I think there are just some questions about the specific concept, but it could be a great space for something else.
Okay.
Okay. Next item is the source restoration. So as a reminder, the source is the big landform sculpture installed down here at Luther Burbank Park. And this would look like a major restoration outside of our annual maintenance program, primarily repairing or restoring the water feature, which I do not think has worked in the time that I've worked here at the city, refreshing the landscape and maybe other pieces that we could do in partnership with the artist who is still around. This idea connects to aesthetic, place, and longevity from our 4 public art pillars. And the other kind of big timeline piece of this is that the source officially turns 50 in 2030. So it could be a good opportunity to celebrate public art in general with a big major restoration or something else to that effect.
What was the water feature
Mhm.
that doesn't work now? What was it or?
So the center of the source, if you kind of walk up to the middle mound and then you see the rockway that kind of leads down to the lake, that is supposed to be kind of a regenerative fountain effectively. So
Like
it's
a little
supposed
stream?
it's supposed to pump water out of the lake, come up through and then go back down. We have never really been able to get the water pump to work in the current location that it is in. There is talk noted here in this as well that this could potentially be coordinated with another project at the swim beach, which is adjacent to the source. So this is, I would say, a capital heavy side project. There would be kind of a lot of engineering, I think, involved with it, but
Yeah, I would ask like on that one that maybe staff come back with some scoping on that because I could see, I won't even go there. But it sounds like it'd be very, very expensive. It is kind of cool just the way it is. I mean, I would love to see it functional, but I imagine it's going to be a substantial cost. And so I guess if
More.
you guys can talk to the artist and to some landscape architects, and geotech or people or whoever's moving dirt or water and come up with like an approximate number, like a range, then we could think more about that.
Yeah, if I could just add, there is, as Sarah's kind of alluding to with the Luther Burbank Swim Beach project, there's a lot of different elements. Part of that is us pulling the water from the lake. There is a pump there, and ideally that pump would be utilized for irrigation as well in that location. So it would serve presumably a dual purpose, bringing that back up to functionality. So just throwing that out there,
Great.
but that would be something we would bring forward to share with the Arts Council.
okay. Next one on the list, staying in Luther Burbank, are amphitheater renovations. So we have our 50-plus-year-old amphitheater out at Luther Burbank Park. And this project would be to design and implement the renovations to better serve future performances and audiences. Staff feel this connects to all four of the four public art pillars. This project is also, again, kind of on the capital side, very heavily straddling the line of capital project. So it would get involved or folded into the process later on, specifically through the capital program, but it is not currently planned for the next 6-year CIP.
I highly support this project, obviously. A question that I have, do we have to maintain the current location the amphitheater is in if we were to improve an amphitheater renovation design at Luther Burbank? Or could there possibly be a reimagining that incorporates the beautiful water features that we have on Luther Burbank?
The current master plan calls for maintaining the amphitheater in the current location. So I think that that's a bigger project about park uses and future facility renovations. Not to say that it couldn't be a community conversation, but it would take kind of another level of outside planning.
Okay. Because I think that obviously it definitely needs some help. But that we have learned at the past couple of summer celebrations how successful performances can be in Luther Burbank and how much people like to come out and have that water feature visible. For obviously, we're facing out for the fireworks because of the setup of that specific event. The stages are not towards the water, but there would be we have an amazing opportunity here to utilize the natural beauty around us while incorporating different types of art, and that the build of a theater performing space in itself is art. I mean, if you look at some of those beautiful old theaters, I mean, I grew up going to the San Francisco War Memorial Opera House for, ballets and operas, and that in itself, the building is just stunning. And then you add the, performance art within it. So I don't know if that's a separate suggestion that we want to put on the list, or if it's something that can be incorporated into the amphitheater renovations. But those are my very, very strong opinions.
If I could just add to that conversation, gosh, we're due for a Luther Burbank master plan update. We're coming up on, this might be 20 years now. So in the next, my guess would be probably next 5 years or so, there will be an update process for the Luther Burbank master plan. One of the things identifying some of these projects on the list that might be helpful to the Arts Council for their next meeting is I can get with Sarah and we can go through our master planning documents and identify where these project opportunities point back to. So we can call that out, but thinking about adding a facility or adding a large scale capital improvement project like a amphitheater in a different location that's usually best served through a master planning process can be kicked off through your pros planning process, which happens every 5 years. So which will be, gosh, I think we're doing that again
I
next
volunteer
year.
as tribute.
So there you go. So from a standpoint of process, that might be the best way to move that conversation forward.
So it wouldn't be something that would belong on this list is basically what you're saying?
I mean, it never hurts to put something on a list, but to think about how to progress things forward in a
Okay.
meaningful manner. Either way, you can point to, you can point to the master plan or you can point back to the 6-year planning list and it can support each other.
Okay,
Is that maybe one more column in this matrix that you would document that?
Yes.
So,
Yep.
because that is important, but we want to know where it would be addressed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which has a level of community input that was already provided to that project item or that idea potentially. So I'm happy to work with Sarah. I'll take it on.
thank
You-
you. I
you-
look to staff to bring that back to us at the next
Yep.
meeting. Thank you. Those were my questions and comments on that. Anyone else for the amphitheater?
So the amphitheater is functional at this moment. It works, it serves its purpose, like,
It's now safe for actors to stand on it without dying, potentially.
I mean, of course, anything can be improved, but I think if we're looking at, if we're gonna compare a genuinely new amenity versus an existing amenity that works but could be improved, maybe we should lean towards a generally new amenity that is, or series of amenities that are really gonna add something new to appeal to some changes that are occurring on the island, like light rail, for instance.
So you're saying to, instead of focus on repairing something, that maybe it would be better to look at a new.
Yeah, in my
a new
mind, if I'm
amphitheater.
thinking about all these projects, I guess I would lean towards that, because the amenity exists, right? So we'll still continue to be able to use the amphitheater. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did it get repaired?
It will need to have renovations in the next, I mean, it's hard to say, right? But let's say the next 5 years. There is some damage to the wood pieces.
And probably some
how
rot.
sturdy Are they gonna stay for the next few years? So
It's
I think renovations are.
But over the next year or two, you'll still be able to have the same events there that you do now.
I would say we have
Primarily.
some significant electrical challenges in that site, so which requires us to always bring in generators for backup power.
Not ideal.
Not ideal, not from a sustainability lens, it's what we're trying to get away from. So thinking about those upgrades and I think, I don't know if we have a project sheet or something like that we can share. No.
And do we have,
So,
another question that I would ask, because we do have a lot of collaborative, people listed here. We've got YTN, we've got Seattle Shakespeare Company. So do we have numbers on the turnouts for those events as well? That would be a really helpful thing to have. I mean, how much I would imagine that Seattle Shakespeare Company is pulling in, numbers and helping with the visit and tourism and islanders, serving islanders themselves. So, so those would be the things to, I think when we're looking at what to focus on, we want to consider what's actually getting used.
And also the value of having this list is if you see a grant opportunity coming through, the pipeline, this has been highlighted. So hopefully that staff has got their eyes out for that. And then maybe when that comes around, then we go to the community and say, hey, let's do a 50-50 with whatever, or culture or whatever.
Right.
So I'm glad it's on the list.
Okay.
Great. Okay, moving on. We've made it to page 2. So number 9, this is another one that is pretty high level and probably just for awareness sake, because the specific capital project is not developed by any major means, but so this would be a straight art and public places project for the new public safety and maintenance building. This ties directly to 1% funding, so the idea would be similar to what we did for the medallions and the Luther Burbank waterfront. We would do a specific site-based project attached to the actual capital project itself. And the relevant pillars are aesthetic and place. And I'm happy to answer questions or provide clarification.
Regarding timing, how often were we looking at kind of going through this process
Mhm.
of escalating or keeping things on the list?
Yeah.
And with relation to this project in specific, like, do we need to elevate it now, or could it stay on the list and be elevated later?
I think this one could stay on the list and be elevated later based on where the city is with it. We proposed looking at and kind of going through this process probably on a shorter time span, because this is the first time we're doing it, and hopefully it'll be less cumbersome next time. But every other year while the city's in the biennial budget planning process. So I think the idea then, I guess just to provide more clarification, is we would probably, at the next point when we're doing the planning, we would start with that 6-year project timeline and say, okay, we're about to get into a new biennium. Do we anticipate that these are still the projects, or do we need to shift things around? And then we would look back at the project opportunity list if things need to be elevated.
So I had a question actually for Councilmember Weinberg. So these new buildings, do they have to be like LEED, silver, or gold? Like the new police station, are there requirements for that already?
I believe so, yeah. Our current building codes, I think, require, memory serves, I think it's gold, yeah, but.
Sorry, what is the question? I'm confused.
Whether or not the building should have some sustainability elements, use of alternative renewable energy, those kind of things, which the
Oh,
answer is yes.
Thank you. I didn't understand that.
So they will have sustainability elements built in that hopefully the city would want to highlight.
Mhm.
I thought you were gonna build the building on gold. I thought that was very exciting.
I'm just curious.
Yes, it would have to be built to the current standards, and I don't have them in front of me, but I do believe that the LEED gold standard is what's required, but I have to double check to make sure. And then the LEED standard is the sustainability standard that you're talking about.
Makes more sense. Any other questions on the? Sorry. Any other questions on the public safety and maintenance building? Okay.
Okay. Similarly, the next one, number 10, Luther Burbank Park Boiler Building, Art in Public Places, signature entrance to the waterfront. So this is a project that had previously been called out as part of a phase 2 of future boiler building renovations. We talked a little bit about it during the process to solicit artists for what became the Medallions project at the waterfront. So this could potentially be continuing that project or doing something different, but the current kind of long-term phase for those renovations calls for a signature entrance or some sort of place-based, placemaking element that brings you down to the water. There would be, I think, new trails eventually built as well that are ADA. Relevant pillars are aesthetic and place. And again, this one is also related to the CIP. It would probably be very similar idea of art project tied specifically to a capital project. So be folded in the same way that the medallions was.
Sarah, how does this tie into the current process that we're in with the medallions and with the renovations down there and the handsome ballards and everything else? How does that all work?
Yeah, so I think what it would probably look like is a similar process to what we did for the medallions, or what became the medallions project. This would have a request for qualifications, going off of whatever eventual design concept is developed. Nothing has been designed for this project or by any means. There is a small element of, well, because the first phase has been in construction and the waterfront has been designed, there has been a lot of thought put into it, but no formal design at that point or by any means. So there's still opportunity to influence it with some art. But yeah, it would look like a standard call for artists, RFQ process, everything that's kind of called out in terms of the selection process in the guidelines.
But it's not already included in that plan?
Correct. It
from
is not.
before.
It is
Okay.
not. Yep.
Okay, got it. I don't need any other clarification on this at this time. Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking whether that location could be a chance for community to make some art there. It will not require so much cost, might be fun for kids or
Have
something.
you, are you familiar with the plan that's already in place to?
Not
Okay,
yet.
would that be
Just
something that we could share with the newer Arts Council members who weren't part of that? So they can have a better idea of the whole scope of the project? I think that would
Yeah,
be
sounds good.
helpful. I'm gonna ask that
Mhm.
staff to take care of that. Thanks, staff. You're my favorites.
I'll just follow up. We'll, if it works for any of the Arts Council members, I'd love to just reach out and we can do a little field trip. We just did one with the Parks Commission, so I'd
Yeah,
do a little walking tour.
I need to do a walking tour of Greta Hackett too, but I want Suzanne to take me on that.
Well, it also looks like some of these could almost, the Luther Burbank one, if you're saying that park plan is going to be addressed, maybe those Luther Burbank things could be grouped together
Mhm.
in this chart kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah,
Definitely.
okay. Any other questions on that? I think it would be very beneficial for, I keep turning them. I think it'd be really beneficial for, like I said, the newer Arts Council members to be aware of the project that's already in process. So any other questions on that at this time? Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Okay, the next one, Historic Street Names Project. We've spent a little bit of time on this in the past few months when we deaccessioned the current street name inlays that are in town center. So as previously discussed, this would be a project to highlight Mercer Island historic downtown street names or other Mercer Island history. Definitely, I would say coordinated in collaboration with the Historical Society and other organizations on the island. And the relevant pillars that we identified were aesthetic, place, and connection. We talked about this one a fair amount.
I was gonna say, I think we've
Yep.
had a lot of conversation
Great.
about this one. I feel good to move on to the next item.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, great.
Next item, construct a permanent stage at Mercerdale Park. I think we've heard allusions to this already. Install a permanent stage at the park for city and community events. This is specific to connection and longevity. And this is potentially tied into a future capital project at Mercerdale Park for park improvements. So
I have a couple of questions on that. I would love to know the cost of renting the stage for this past summer. Did we leave it up in between? Or did it get put up? Was it only for summer celebration? Did we yes, Katie, please Thank you.
Yeah, so we rented the stage for all 7 of our Mercer, mostly music in the parks, as well as the day of summer celebration. It does not stay up in between because we rent it and that company rents it close to 6 or 7 days a week. And
Okay.
so they can only fit us in to their schedule
Right.
as needed. I can get you costs.
It would just be good to know if, I mean, is it one of those things that would pay for itself in a couple of years? Is it one of those things where, you know, if we're going to be using it at other events during the year, does it end up being a cost-effective thing? It's like my whole thing with throwaway, as a church musician, throwaway hymnals versus permanent hymnals. And, you know, the cost of, do you guys know what I'm saying, right? And so that would be a really great thing to have more information on at a future meeting. And that is my only question. Oh, my other question would be, where would it be installed? Would it be where it was for summer celebration? There was also a like kind of smaller stage over in the corner where there were like some circus things.
Oh, yeah,
going.
that, they just had a backdrop. So
Oh,
it wasn't
okay.
another stage. We just rented the one stage for the summer.
And so how would, I guess, just more clarification would be like, how would that play into the
Excellent question.
pergola? What
The
do you call it?
pergola.
Pergola, yeah. Like,
So-
does it go in place of the pergola? Does it go in front of the pergola? Does it go in another, like, how does that? So those are questions I have
Right.
for, you know,
You're asking a lot of questions
I'm sorry.
that would happen during the design process.
Right.
So we would work with the Arts Council and the Parks and Recreation Commission and the community at large. This would be a rather large
It
undertaking.
would be a big project. Okay.
And there could be some other impacts on impervious surface, other projects happening within the park.
Right.
The current park updates, or I should say improvements that we're gonna be going are more focused on the trail area relating to the sewer that runs under there. So we were originally anticipating a large scale Mercerdale Park master planning process.
Okay.
That's kind of been put on the back burner, but this project still remains as a opportunity for us to evaluate.
Okay.
These are
So-
all good things to bookmark in that other considerations column.
Yeah.
I think the cost issue is really good. And then if we could also put in maybe how many people came to the music in the park. So. what was
And
there-
summer
where's there- yeah,
celebration.
Yeah, so
numbers
how many
on those.
people put eyes on that stage in 2024? That would be a really valuable, just best estimate.
And other events that are happening there where the stage could be utilized. You know, I know right now, one of the issues is there's no rain cover down there at all, anywhere.
No.
So, you know, for instance, if we have, you know, a performance group at the lighting celebration coming up.
Oh, I've
you
seen
know,
them for drill team practices and dance practices and yoga events. Saturday morning yoga could be done on the stage.
Right,
I
yeah.
mean,
yeah.
it would be a dry amphitheater or dry whatever.
Yes, yeah. So, okay, thank you. We don't have to talk about it more, and I'm sorry if I'm asking too many questions.
You are not asking too many questions. That is the purpose of this conversation right now. Okay, moving on. The next one, enhance activities at the Luther Burbank Park waterfront, activate the waterfront with arts activities. This is specific to place and connection. I think similar to some of what we've been discussing with the outdoor sculpture gallery and now potentially improvements in Luther Burbank. I think, you know, art activation is maybe something that could be addressed in a future planning effort. But we can leave it on the list for now, at least.
And is this, when it says enhance activities, activate the waterfront with arts activities, are we talking about just events or performances, or are we talking about actually enhancing it with development? So does this fall into the category of like what we were talking about earlier when we were addressing the amphitheater, or is this one just?
I think this one was very high level and vague, so I think maybe this is more specific about location than anything else. If you're really interested in the waterfront at Luther Burbank.
Got it. Did this come out of one of your ideas? Okay,
No,
because I know you'd said something about using water as
I
utilizing.
think it's a good idea, but I think it gets lumped in with that Luther Burbank
Yeah,
master plan.
it seems like a lot of these could sort of be maybe
Mhm.
put
Condensed.
together. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. moving on, Art Walk at the Greta Hackett Outdoor Sculpture Gallery. I think this is also very similar, one that could be rolled into maybe an art activation plan or something for the outdoor sculpture gallery, but does anyone want to speak on this or ask questions? Okay. Okay. Maybe similar, but more generally applied to the entire public art collection instead of just the location of the outdoor sculpture gallery. Public art talks, this idea is to offer talks by local artists or and/or at works in the public art collection. Relevant pillars include place and connection. I think Councilmember Gibson, you said something earlier about like an idea on the list being connected to some of the broader public engagement or other pieces of the plan. I would say that this one falls in that as well, because it is pretty specific to public art activation. So, but beyond that, no specificity included on this one for now. Okay, keep going. Local art auction fundraiser, art exhibit of local artists to raise funding for public art projects connected to connection and longevity. Maybe this is also similar, that it gets kind of folded into the funding section as opposed to a specific project on the project opportunity list.
Yeah, I agree. I think fundraising, and also that I think that the idea for fundraisers generally comes once you have a project that you're working on, because people like to know what they're supporting. And I think that you could also say that with the fundraiser, it doesn't have to, the way it's worded makes it seem like it's just visual art again. But I think that when you put on a fundraiser, that you want performance art too. So I think that that's a whole separate section though, fundraising for the arts. We could have a separate council.
You volunteering to lead that one, Chair Mitchell?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Okay. We'll keep it moving then. Host literary events, offer literary art events such as poetry readings and showcase works at the community center gallery, connected to aesthetic and connection.
I think we should throw the library on there for the partnership opportunities. And Island Books does already host a lot of wonderful things. We love our Island Books. They are super supportive of our community. So yeah, my only other thing would be to add the public library. I don't think it gets enough promotion.
Oh, okay. I'm also thinking, like, I saw another project like the 5 minutes before the Arts Council meeting. Maybe during that recital, someone can come and read some of their literature.
Yeah, for this one, it does seem like there are other organizations that put on these types of events. And I think what would be good if we had an item like this one on our list would be adding some clarity to how the Arts Council would maybe support other organizations and what ways we can support or have the means to support those types of efforts or events or so on. But actually hosting the events may not be in our wheelhouse.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So the next one, a mural collaboration with Mercer Island High School. This is another project a specific project that came forward a few years ago from the community to produce a community mural specifically in collaboration with Mercer Island High School students. At the time, the students who brought the idea forward were interested in some sort of Black Lives Matter mural, but I think given the time that has passed. If the Arts Council were interested in pursuing or, restarting a conversation around collaborating with the high school on a specific mural project, we'd probably want to start, the process over in terms of theme and everything like that. But if you are interested in kind of very specific collaboration or direct collaboration with the high school or the school district, this could be a good project opportunity.
I think we've definitely established that one of our priorities is engagement with the school district. And the high school has a lot of amazing different types of art. I actually got to go to my daughter's metal jewelry making class last week, and I made a ring, and I got to meet the therapy dogs, which they are so cute. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities, and there's some beautiful art. I got to walk around and look at all the different types of tile making and glass making and jewelry making. And so we do actually have an incredibly strong program there, from band to orchestra to art. So I think that we, from my perspective, would, if we looked at some specific places where we're talking about putting murals, then it would be a matter of collaborating with that. And, I think any type of art we're looking at doing, there's an opportunity for that. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we would add this as a separate item, or it could be included, wrapped into this, but I would like to see the utility boxes wrapped. And I think, and if you don't know what I mean, you see them in many other communities, instead of just a silver or a green box, electrical box sitting there on the sidewalk, it has basically a mural on it. And I think that is something staff could follow up on, in the sense of how much does a wrap cost? Is that something that a high school kid or a classroom could design something, send it off electronically, the wrap is produced, and city staff applies it to the utility box, and they get their signature initials on it and their date on it, and that there's your historical record, you're tying your community in, and it would definitely beautify some really kind of
Eyesore.
egregious utility boxes on the island. So I think that might be a way. I mean, murals, we're always challenged with the location, the maintenance, and really the quality of art. I mean, mural art is not to be taken lightly. I mean, it is an art, and it requires, talented professionals. So I'm a little leery of that, but I would love to see the wraps, and that would be a way to reach out to the high school community.
They can do the one at my house that I've tried to cover up with a bush. If they want to come in, I have a perfect opportunity. Yeah, I love the mural when you get off at North Mercer Way and you come in that one up. That's you know where I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
I don't do street names. I do locations. So, but that's a beautiful mural. I think that there's opportunity, but yes, quality is important. I concur. Anybody else?
So in terms of the outreach to the high school, I think we definitely need to tell them we're open for business, like, again. And I don't know who would do that, but I guess to be part of the communication outreach element. And that we are looking for ideas. It may be a mural, maybe something else, but just to let them know that we're really very interested in hearing what they have to say.
Okay, so the next idea is public art collection curation. So this is to evaluate existing curation and implement improvements. Public art pillars, aesthetic, place, and longevity. And I think more details about this, because this is sort of a vague, another vague one. This is the idea, I think, of assessing our existing public art collection and, maybe even evaluating them against the new 4 public art pillars to see if they are meeting the needs in terms of current installation, or something like that. This is also one that if the Arts Council were interested in going down this path, this could potentially be folded into our annual public art maintenance and assessed and implemented at the same time.
And Sarah, would this also address some of the art pieces that are just sitting around not being utilized? Are we working to like look at those and address that in any way? Would this be part of that?
Yes, this would be part of that, although currently we have 3 pieces in storage right now. One is going back to the location it was originally part of or installed in. One is going to go into town center eventually, and then the other was just removed out of the outdoor sculpture gallery because of the forthcoming commuter parking construction. So we'll need to reinstall that eventually. But yes, this would include if there's anything. I think we have a couple 2D works of art that currently are not on view either. So it would be assessing all of that and figuring out.
Okay, and this isn't already something that is sort of, because you said we have our annual, how is this different?
So this is different because it's specifically related to, well, how do I explain this or phrase this? This would be specifically related more to kind of interpretation and engagement as opposed to like long-term maintenance and care. So I'm thinking about, you know, as an example, there's there's a couple of pieces in Aubrey Davis Park installed, the little girl and the puppy kind of thing. Take a look at that and determine, you know, is this the best location based on what we're trying to achieve through the public art program? And if not, what do we do about that? Do we activate the space differently? Do we think about reciting these pieces? Those types of things, as opposed to, you know, we have to clean this piece this year versus others.
And this isn't something that we already kind of have folded in?
It isn't, because it is kind of an extra layer. I mean, historically, our practice has been install it and stays in perpetuity until it's either damaged or someone decides that they want to remove it. So
Okay.
this would be kind of a more active
Sort of
ongoing look.
evaluation?
Yeah.
Would that be,
Okay.
apply, you know, I don't know what's happening at City Hall, but there was the little foxes or whatever.
Mhm.
So if City Hall is closed and your little fox's sculpture is sitting out in the courtyard for many years, maybe it could be relocated.
It could
Yeah.
go to my house too. I like
Yeah.
foxes. And did you know that it is actually not legal to own a pet fox in the state of Washington? And that makes me sad.
You can buy it at the art auction that we're gonna do.
Okay.
I think my thoughts on this, you know, if we're talking about reciting specific pieces of art, those are the opportunities that should go on this list. I think stating that, you know, we are open to those types of ideas can be either in the collection of care section or somewhere in the actual work plan, but not necessarily on the opportunities list. And then
So it's sort of a maximum and best use. So
Yeah.
if something is not being used, it's probably something we need to look at.
So yeah,
or
that's
might
why I
want to
was
look at.
clarifying is that should this just be part of our plan in general to sort of take a look at all of the Mercer Island art? And so again, I do think that that's a very important thing. I just don't know exactly where it should go.
Mhm.
If you have a better idea.
No, I think that this is really helpful. I think, you know, once we get through all of this, we've taken a ton of notes, and I think that there will be some shuffling based on the conversation we've had, not only in terms of, you know, what you all provide with your dot exercise before the end of the night, and of course, adding in additional information about master plan alignment, but you know, some of these things, it was pulled off the project opportunity list and folded into the funding section, that kind of thing. So
Great.
we'll
Okay.
definitely make those changes as well.
Okay. Thank you.
So if I may just ask, so what would be the process for, let's say there was a piece that we really thought should be in Greta Hackett Park? What would be the process for recommending that or proposing that as like art council members, for instance?
I think that the process would be probably bringing it forward either as a separate project on this project opportunities list or I think kind of a recommendation or for discussion. I think that currently the procedures that are outlined in the guidelines, as well as the information about community engagement, are all kind of tied to new works of art. But I hadn't necessarily thought about existing works of art. So I also think that there's some work that I can do on that as well to kind of propose an easy process to figure that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, we've made it to the last page. All right. This idea, public art installation at the Mercer Island Transit Interchange, that is the roundabout that is installed in Town Center. And I think this idea was specifically to install a sculpture or other kind of large place-based piece, relevant pillars, place and connection. And this one, we haven't talked a ton about agency coordination. I know we noted WashDOT on a few things. This one would require significant coordination with Sound Transit, among other things.
Which is a job for city council, right? You have to negotiate with them, right?
It's interesting. I think they actually just sold for $0 that roundabout back to the city.
Oh.
As well as the street and the
Really?
right of way near it. So I'm not sure to what extent, because they're right adjacent to that,
Right.
to what extent we need to coordinate with them. And there's a line that's like right on the edge of the freeway where everything not south of that is washed out.
Okay.
So,
All right,
yes.
that's good to know. Thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions or clarification on this one? Okay. Next idea, 5-minute performances at Arts Council meetings. This would be, I think, an idea that was referenced earlier, host local artists at Arts Council meetings. This is relevant to aesthetic and connection. I think probably one that could be grouped with some other ideas that we've talked about tonight, if the Arts Council is interested in condensing, or also one that could be folded into the public art activation piece in the public engagement section.
It seems like this is one that could get folded in, I think, or, yeah.
Okay. Other thoughts or, okay. Next one, costume or stage design sponsorships for live performance. So the idea would be to sponsor costume, set, and other design for live performance. I would assume on Mercer Island, but I don't think it's that specific right now. Relevant pillars, aesthetic, and connection. I think this would likely be a really great collaboration with YTN, a Youth Theater Northwest, if we were to do something like this, as well as Seattle Shakespeare Company, which does use the amphitheater in Luther Burbank Park every summer.
So how would this work? Would this be like the city goes after grants that would help with this? Because it's not eligible for the 1% fund, my understanding. And so.
Right. Yeah. So this is definitely something that's more connected to operations than capital for sure. I think that this, if the Arts Council were interested in including this, what this would probably look like is identifying funding sources first. So whether it's grants or, we build it into a future operations budget. And then maybe a very specific public art outcome is that somehow we memorialize specific permanent public art installation or outcome is we memorialize what was created in the form of, acquiring the sketches of the designs or, keeping one of the costumes that was made kind of thing. So that's how I see the kind of physical public art connection coming in, but this is one that would require a lot of incorporation with the operations side of the house.
I love the idea and the acknowledgement that that what we wear can be art, especially just after this fabulous production that I saw this weekend, Scheherazade, and they actually put a fashion show in the middle of the performance, which was kind of cool because it was recognizing that fashion is another form of art. The other thing that you'll often see, especially when you go to like the ballet at McCaw Hall, they'll have the actual costumes out on display behind glass cases. And you can see tutus, like they take hundreds of hours of work to create like one tutu. It's amazing. And so I feel like this is something that could, I love that it's on this list so we can have this conversation, but I think it's something that could be, kind of tied into all of the other opportunities for art that we have. Maybe we get a display case that lives in the community center. When we have up, an art show, we also could do, a rotating fashion costuming, something along those lines. I think it's a really interesting idea. So I think you put this one forward. And
I think so. I can't.
I think you did. And I really, I think it's really, really interesting. Also, I just had to get a new sewing machine because my old one died. Does this count? Can I get that? Can the city pay for my new? Okay, no, sorry. It was worth a shot. But no, I don't know where it should live or what it means. I think it should maybe just like sit here and possibly could be a future, opportunity. I would still weigh in that we need a stage for the costumes to be on. So I'm gonna go back to that. I'm so subtle.
Okay. All right, just a few more. The next one, community initiated public art projects. Host an annual call from proposals from the community. This is specifically attached to Connection. Again, I think this is another one that is pretty vague and ties pretty well to kind of the higher level goals and even process for public art projects. So maybe this is another one that gets pulled off this specific project opportunities list because it's already included just in the general approach in the work plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I concur.
Okay, just a few more. The next one, Dean's Children's Park, Art in Public Places. I assume everyone here is aware, but the city is in the process of renovating most of its play areas and replacing playground structures on the island over the next 15 to 16 years, thanks to a parks levy that the community supported a couple of years ago. So a big project within the parks levy is to redesign the Dean's Playground area. This doesn't include replacing the dragon, but eventually play equipment will be replaced, and we are starting the process now to look at redesigning the entire area to be maybe more inclusive, more universally accessible, and more cohesive, especially with the new bike skills area that opened last year. So this is another specific project, Art in Public Places, that the construction project itself will generate 1% money. And so it could be a good opportunity to look at specific art integration instead of banking that funds for something else.
So Dean's Children's Park is what everybody calls Dragon Park, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the name, did it come from a Mercer Island resident?
Family. Yep.
That donated funds for the park? Is that?
So Lola Dean and I believe her husband were very active in the community. Lola Dean, I think, was a founder of the Mercer Island Preschool Association and either a founder or the major driving force behind the Mercer Island Community Fund. I believe she was also chosen as Community Member of the Year a couple of years ago.
Cool.
So yes, family oriented name for sure.
Awesome. Okay. I was just clarifying because, Aubrey Davis Park, everybody calls the Lid, and, this one everybody calls Dragon Park. So I just wanted to have a little clarification on that. I know that this is a really popular place. I have friends that live off island that come just to go to Dragon Park with their kiddos on the weekend. And I know it's often a place for like play date meetups and things like that for like incoming kindergartners and things like that. So I fully this. I think the redesign of the park next to the thrift store was fabulous. The damage to it was unfortunate, and I hope, has it been repaired? Mostly?
I think parts of it have been.
For the most part.
Okay, yeah.
We have a couple more items to check off, but it's back open.
Good, excellent. But I think that that is fabulous and it just makes the entire, I mean, my kiddos are bigger now, but I love the thrift store and I love seeing the kids out there playing on the park. And so I think that this is investing in our future. So I think this is great. And of course, the dragon can't ever go away. So.
I
So
would,
that, I'm sorry.
I would voice my support for this one as well. And then I also wanted to ask, timing wise, this would need to get elevated rather quickly, it appears. Is that
Right, so yeah, what the timing would look like is the design process will kick off next year after, I believe, the first of the year. And so that would be the best time to, one, identify what art opportunities would be with the landscape architect. And then from there, it would be kind of a similar process again for the medallions, that the eventual, if it's a specific public art project or if it's art elements integrated, they would run on, be designed in coordination and run on a kind of a similar track with the actual capital project implementation.
And is the dragon structurally sound?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the only reason it's not being changed or anything, is that it's in good shape.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Yes.
Yes. Did you have a comment, Councilmember Harrington?
I was asking about time.
Oh, great. Okay.
So is this a project, does this project require a lot of capital for the fund? Compared to, I mean, the first project we were talking, were really excited. So would these two compete with each other?
Well, it sounds like that there's already going to be improvements made. Is that correct? That's already a planned thing. And hence that if we wanted to incorporate art aspects, that we would want to move on it. So we could,
Right.
is that right? Okay, do you want to, sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's, I would say a little bit of both. So, yes, there are limited funds. And so through this process, we are going to have to identify, it's part of the reason of doing a public art project timeline instead of trying to implement every single one of these projects at once. We have to make choices. But yes, this project, because it is a significant capital project, will generate its own 1% dollars. I have no idea what the project budget for construction will be at this point, but that will be an element of it. So similar to, again, I keep referencing the medallions because it's fresh on our minds and so recent, but with the medallion project, we opted to appropriate some funds from the existing 1% fund so we could start actually do the design and get everything ready to go for construction. That project won't be constructed until the waterfront is constructed in a couple of years. And so that actual contribution that the 1% that project is giving to 1% won't be banked for a couple of years. So those are things that we're going, part of the reason we put the projections in of what to expect in terms of funding for 1%. That's to help give you an idea, but of course there's going to be trade-offs because we don't have as much money as other cities have for public art projects. We're a smaller community, so we'll definitely have to make decisions on that.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. And
Yeah,
then
so
yeah.
this really wasn't on my radar, but now it is. And I think it's a real opportunity to maybe work with MIPA and really enhance that park, like a art manipulatives for young children and kind of focus on the young children aspect.
That's exactly what I was
So,
gonna say.
I
Yeah.
think it would be up to staff to come back to us with a suggestion on how to get that process started. But I do think it'd be nice if we could unload it on somebody else, like MIPA. I think they'd have a lot of fun with it. They know their clientele and they know what's out there, and not only in our community, but in other communities. So they've probably experienced that type of art that is durable, safe, accessible to small children. So I think maybe staff can come back to something with something. And yeah, I think I'm going to put a green dot on it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that we've had so many conversations about interactive art that the
Mhm.
play structure in itself could be, art. I was just randomly, one that popped up in my head was they remodeled a park back in my hometown in California, and they put in these, it's beautiful, but it also, when you hit them, they make different notes and you can play music on them, which is really, really cool.
I
So
think they
that's
might
just a
even have
good.
that down there
Do we-
already.
Do they already? I don't,
they have
like I
that
said, my
down
kids are
there?
older.
I
Do they
think
have
it's,
one like that?
yeah, they
Yeah,
do.
but it probably needs to be.
It needs to
re-
be upgraded,
what?
yeah.
I was playing with it a couple weeks ago.
I bet,
Yeah.
and your kids were at home. Yeah. But probably, things like that, but probably need to be upgraded. So I don't know if that falls under, I don't know who that falls under, but yes, I think we're all in agreement on dual. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, next one, our penultimate idea, natural resources plus a public art collaboration. So this idea is to implement a permanent public art project in connection with the city's forest stewardship program, which is an active program in our natural resources division. Takes care of all of our beautiful forests and open spaces with a lot of volunteer engagement and activity. Relevant pillars, aesthetic, place, and connection. This is one that could potentially be a good kind of build off of work that is already done by our forest stewardship program. Our volunteer coordinator organizes arts related components to a lot of the volunteer stewardship programs that they are already facilitating, including a recent project that was put on by the Rotary Club at Rotary Park through their forest stewardship program. So good opportunity to build on something that already exists here in the city.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
No. Yeah, I really like this idea. And I think I have for easier operation, maybe we can think about the digital display of some art creation, either through the social media, like city's social media, to publish some art create together with the forest steward program.
That's great. Okay. All right, the last one is mural at the Luther Burbank Park Sport Courts. This would be to add designs or murals to the walls that are currently bare inside the newly renovated sport court facility. There is one mural on the western wall at, I guess now we call them pickleball courts. They are no longer playable for tennis. Down at the pickleball courts, there are several other concrete walls inside that beautiful new facility that could use some love. So it could be a good opportunity to add some more aesthetic design down there.
What is DINK, please? Sorry.
Dink
It's a pickleball
Dink on Mercer
association.
Island is a local nonprofit organization that is basically coordinates and brings together the pickleball community here. Dink is, I think, the universal term for the ding that the ball makes off the paddle. Yeah.
Got it. You
Yep.
guys know I don't know anything about pickleball. I've made that clear before. I don't sports, but that's cool. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, we made it through the list. So the last thing we're gonna do with this tonight then is to go ahead and do some voting. Now, again, let me bring my screen back up, go back to our PowerPoint. Okay.
So the
Share.
things that you've kind of said are gonna be wrapped into other things we don't need a vote on.
I
Or-
would say still vote on them if you, if you feel strongly about the idea, maybe at
Put
the
a
very least, put
green.
an orange.
An orange.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so, okay, so here are our dots up here again. Pink dot is which opportunities, if any, you'd like to remove from the draft list that we went through. Orange dot, any opportunities you would like to keep on the project opportunities list to consider for future implementation. Or green dot, which are the opportunities you would like to elevate to that draft 6-year project timeline. And so before you get up and mark your dots, we have again the 3 pages over here. If you could just pick 1 dot for each item. So this is not a, if I put 5 greens on one, it means it's not that kind of voting. It's more of this is the winnowing process right now. So choose whether or not you want to add a pink, orange, or green. Yes, to your point, Councilmember Harrington, I would request that if one of the ideas we discussed was one that we discussed moving over elsewhere in the plan, and you support that idea, just put an orange dot. I will, I have enough notes, so I know that an orange dot on that one doesn't mean you wanted to stay on this specific list, but you wanted to stay in the plan. If you on the same end, if there's like ones like that you don't want anywhere in the work plan at all, put a pink dot and we'll look at removing it. So yeah, dot away. Okay, so just for the public record, our Arts Council got up and participated in an in-person exercise here at the community center. We will post the kind of findings of their exercise as part of the presentation when it is finalized and posted online with the packet and the video recording. But I think for the purposes of tonight, I would say that this is a great stopping point, and I think we will pick our conversation up again about public art guidelines at the next meeting. Couple things I will say. So we do have a couple Arts Council members who were not able to attend tonight. So I plan to reach out to them and invite them to watch the recording, at least the discussion of all of the different project ideas, and then to complete the dot exercise on their own. So then I will fold their responses into the overall matrix. And then at the next meeting, in addition to kind of continuing the conversation about the public art guidelines, we'll also revisit this project opportunities list in terms of the shuffling around that we've done, all the different dot alignment. This will not be the last opportunity to keep something on the list. You know, I don't see a ton of full pink dots necessarily. I'm seeing a lot of good greens and oranges, so there will still be more opportunity to advocate for something, but that'll be based on kind of that shuffled around list, things that have moved off into other parts of the plan, as well as some additional information that the Arts Council has requested that we bring back forward. But on that, I am going to close it out on my end. Thank you so much again to you all. I know it's been a long night. I really appreciate your engaged conversation. I will follow up with an email as well about some of those deadline things that we already talked about. So back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think this was a very productive meeting and we made a lot of good progress and answered a lot of questions. So we will move on to other business and absences. My first question is if any counselors present have a planned absence for our next regular meeting on January 15th to report at this time. So that will be our regular Arts Council meeting, one of the 4 of the year. It's on a Wednesday night. As far as we know for now, everyone can attend. Fabulous. Counselors, may I have a motion to excuse Vice Chair Becker and Counselor Yun from tonight's meeting, their absences from tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Fabulous. Can I have a second? Thank you. There is a motion by Counselor Gibson and a second by Counselor Scone. And do we need to vote on it? I guess so. Any comments before we vote on the absences? No, fabulous. Okay, please turn on your microphones and will city staff please conduct a roll call vote?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Counselor Harrington,
Approve.
Counselor Rajagopal,
Approve.
Counselor Scone,
Approve.
Chair Mitchell,
Approve.
Counselor Gibson.
Approve.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And if there is no other business to come before the Arts Council, the time is now 8:35 and the meeting is adjourned. As a reminder to counselors, please stay seated until city staff has terminated the broadcast. Good evening and thank you for joining us.